Hello and welcome to this eSchool News webcast. My name's Andrew Barber. I'm a senior contributing editor with eSchool News, and I'll be acting as the moderator for today's presentation, which is titled Creating a Healthy Digital Environment, a Roadmap for Balancing Your Tech and Learning Goals with Your Privacy and Security Responsibilities. Our webinar today is sponsored by BrightBytes, which works to improve the way people around the world learn. Its team of researchers and statisticians uses in-depth analysis to power a business intelligence and decision support platform called Clarity. Clarity makes this research educative, engaging, and actionable, giving leaders the data they need to make informed decisions about students, staff, stakeholders, and systems, and also to drive learning outcomes. BrightBytes provides modules for technology and learning, early warning dropout prevention, leadership, digital privacy and security, and 21st century service agencies. Now, before I introduce our speakers, I want to take a couple of moments to highlight some housekeeping items here. First, we will be recording the event today. So in a couple of days, you'll receive an email from us that will contain a link to the recorded event, and you'll also be able to download a PDF of the presentation from that same email. And second, please ask questions. Don't feel as if you have to wait until the end. At any time during the presentation, if you have a question, just type it into the Q&A console box on your console and hit the submit button. I hope to have 10 or 15 minutes or so at the end when our speakers can answer your questions. We also have a chat function, which can be launched via that brown group chat icon down at the bottom of your screen. Please use the chat to talk among yourselves or to contact me or the eSchool News team with any technical issues or concerns you may have. However, I would ask you please not to use the chat function to ask the panelists questions. They just aren't going to have time to monitor the chat. So if you have a question, again, please use the Q&A panel instead. And if, like me, you find it hard to see the text on some slides, you can make the slideshow bigger by clicking on the green button in the upper right-hand corner of the panel titled Slides. You can also move the panels around by dragging them around the console. Now, with that out of the way, I want to welcome our speakers. Marsali Hancock is President and CEO of the iKeepSafe Coalition, a nonprofit that Marsali launched in 2005. iKeepSafe.org, as it is commonly known, is an international network of more than 100 policy leaders, educators, public health and law enforcement professionals, technology experts, and advocates who help track the effects of Internet-connected devices on children. And through research and literature reviews, Marsali develops tools to identify and measure quality digital practices for schools, industries, and families. And our other speaker today is Stephen Carr, who's the Chief Technology Officer for the Ventura County Office of Education. And Stephen's Technology Services Department serves 20 school districts and more than 145,000 students and staff. He is currently President-elect of the California Educational Technology Professional Association and has just been recognized as one of the National School Board Association's 20 to Watch, a program that identifies emerging education technology leaders who have the potential to impact the field for the next 20 years. Now, our webinar today will be divided into two main parts. First, Marsali will discuss how schools can comply with new privacy laws to create an environment in which students can thrive in today's digital culture. And then Stephen will share his experiences at the Ventura County Office of Education. And then finally, at the end, our speakers will field questions from the audience. Now, if you want to tweet about what you're learning during the webinar, please use @BrightBytes as part of your back-channel conversation. Without further ado, let me turn it over to our speakers. Marsali and Stephen, it's an honor to have you here today. Marsali, why don't you kick us off?
Thank you so much. We're absolutely thrilled to be together today, and I'm here in Ventura County, beautiful office. We're all together, And just so excited to share with you, for me to be able to share with you things that I've seen that work so well here in Ventura County and the type of leadership that's been coming from Steve and his team and Dana. So I'm absolutely thrilled. So iKeepSafe is a nonprofit, and we focused for over a decade on what does it take to help a child thrive in a digital culture. So not what's just the baseline, what keeps them alive, but what do they really need to know to thrive. And so to do that, we work with researchers, we work with people who are developing content, we ask the question, who are the primary stakeholders? Who has a big, important role to play? Who has access to the students or the children? Who works with families? So looking across section, the stakeholders involve policy leaders, schools, parents, industry, public health, law enforcement. The digital environment touches children everywhere. So we want to make sure that we are looking holistically at this culture. One of the areas where we spent quite a bit of time is we wanted to know what's actually going on. So not just what shows up in the news or what is one or two people talking about, but what are the real situations. So when we started gathering information from either those types of situations that would show up in a court, either civil or criminal, and then what do we see in the public health community? So what impacts a child's health and wellness, or their physical or the mental well-being? And when we put that all together, we didn't want to come to schools with a list of all the things that could go wrong, because that doesn't help you very much. Just like when you go to a pediatrician, I don't want the pediatrician to tell me, well, Marsali, your daughter can die of cholera, typhoid, just give me all the diseases. I wanted to tell me how do I have a healthy and well child? So we've been asking those same questions. And through identifying what actually shows up on campus that you have to deal with and what actually shows up in a life, between 6 core areas, you can address those skills and competencies in a positive way. And we call that our Be a Pro framework. So if you're in a school system and you have challenges, it's going to fall within one of these 6 areas. So it's balance, ethics, privacy, reputation, relationships, and online security. So over 10 years, we've been working in and out of the United States with a wide range of schools. So I'm just really excited to be right here in Ventura to share with you some of the things that we've seen that have been working so well, and how working together has been great for both of us. So we have to ask the question, why does it matter? And if you're at school, you know already, because kids live their life online. They are absolutely ubiquitously on and off. So what that means is what happens on campus might show up online, if you want it there or not. And what happens online shows up and impacts how things are going in the classroom. And this is different. So we're the first generation of teachers or educators who have had to figure it out on our own, because when we went to college, did you learn how to navigate emotional issues from people from the web, or security issues, or there's just so many things. So we've been asking this question now for many years. What does this mean for schools? What does it mean for students? What's required for a school to create a culture and an online environment where people feel healthy and well, and they know how to support each other? So that's been our focus. And in that quest, when you look at schools now, if I'm in a school system and I walk in the door, there's a set of expectations about my behavior. So how I interact with you as adults, or how I interact with students, everybody knows the drill. So whether you are delivering a product to the school and you're a truck driver, or if you're working in the cafeteria doing food services, or if you're a bus driver, or if you're, everybody has a set of expectations. This is how we keep our children safe, and this is how we do it. So how do we do that same thing in the digital culture? For the same reason that one security guard on campus can't make all the children safe in the school environment, it takes the whole school. It's the same thing in the digital environment. So what are the types of skills and competencies that every single person who has access to students' data, or to students who are having issues or situations in the digital environment, or if you have data that you have a situation with because perhaps that data is harmful or even illegal content. So we've been asking, how do we do this, and who are the stakeholders? Then how do we work together? And then what types of tools do we have that are available to help us? And we've seen some very effective models where stakeholders come together, and Ventura is one of those. So we'll talk about that a little bit more. So here comes the big, $100 question. Can we all be completely, now we're all safe and secure and everybody knows just what to do? In what segment of time can you actually have everyone all on the same page? So it's actually about a journey. And just like a coach has a playbook where you pretty much know lots of variables that could happen when you're out on the field, you've practiced, you've talked, you've trained, everybody knows their roles. This is the same type of situation or same type of environment we want with digital devices, with our expectations about behavior, about how we protect the data and move the data, our expectations. It's about a journey. Now, what makes the journey a little different than our offline journey, first of all, if I'm at school, I can see everybody. So I know, I can see the implications and I can see what's going on. But in the digital space, there are a set of variables that are just happening outside of our visual or audio space. And some of that has to do with laws and privacy laws. Then it also has to do with students' behavior. Sometimes it's happening on their phone under their desk and you're not watching, you're not seeing actually what's happening. And then you've got parents who have concerns and they want opportunities, they want their children prepared. You've got a whole series of digital incidents. And I don't know, when you went to college, if anybody talked to you about how to handle a sexting case or a cyberbullying case, like how do you get to the bottom of that if you haven't had training? So everybody, every day is having to deal with that. So when you look at the landscape changes. So our infrastructure of how we work together needs to also change. So I'm going to just take one example. So I'm going to focus just on privacy right now. So 3 or 4 years ago, it was pretty much the same environment or expectations about privacy. But in the last 2 years, this is just seriously the last 2 years, over 45 states had 300 bills introduced into their legislatures. 60 laws have been passed, and there's over 33. I think it's 33. There's over 30, but I think it's 33 states have new student privacy laws. That's so many. And some of the laws are really a big deal. So why? Why is there all this angst about student data and privacy? And it's because the digital environment is ubiquitous and we can know so much about each other. The whole goal in education is to give students the information they need in a way that they really want it. And to do that, we end up gathering up all sorts of great stuff that help us to do that. But it's really important that we keep it right there where we can keep children's specifics anonymized. So our goal, and my personal goal, is to see how can we help schools navigate the need for privacy, but not in a way that we lose all of the great opportunities that can only come through really good data and through being able to know about the student. So in the legal framework, things have really moved rapidly. And this next slide, if you're in one of these states, you have new things to think about. Some of the laws are specific about how you manage data and expectations around it. Some of the laws set new responsibilities and roles and also liabilities on educators. Some have to do with the vendors and how the vendors are moving students' data. And there's several that are very specific about contracts. So making sure that as a school system, you are reviewing and looking and building into your contracts very clear expectations with your vendors and how they're moving the data and how you'll work together if there's a data breach. So it's not just a little thing that you can, in about 5 minutes, scan and then figure out, okay, go team, go. You actually have to understand how these details work. So the challenge or the opportunity that we have is we have to shift the paradigm. So 10 years ago, and even 5 years ago, but for sure 10 years ago, it was a different situation with technology. So everybody already knows how to protect student data in a paper environment. There's decades of experience. Educators have been dealing with it over and over and over, and there's a set of expectations. Then we went from our filing cabinets, and we went to our school servers. Well, in the server, you knew where it was, you had the key, there was the ventilation, you knew the team that came in and installed the software, and those folks would come and train you, and all that data stayed here on campus, and it was a different situation. Well, now we have an opportunity for better information and more secure servers and a lot of opportunities that come through services that come through the web or cloud or web operators. So what that means is that we're not 100% sure, unless we're careful, where our data goes. So what we used to be able to do with paper documents, which was if you had permission from a parent, there's a set of expectations around directory information. We used to move that so comfortably, and everybody knew the drill. And you knew the few students that parents were careful and they didn't want to have their, their directory stuff included in the directory, and everybody knew that. But now in the digital environment, these laws and the privacy protection are requiring different sets of expectations. So what you used to do really quickly and easily, now you have to think carefully and make sure you have the systems in place. So this next slide gives you a visual of this. So this slide has the new California laws. So on the blue side on the left is the federal laws that we've been living with those for years. So it's COPPA from the FTC, it's FERPA from the Department of Education, and PPRA. Those are Department of Education. Then we've got the federal ones in the middle with the health laws and the data breach, and now we've got California. So this is a cheat sheet. So if you take and you'll be able to download and get access to all of these documents. So connected with the webinar, there's many resources that you'll be able to download and use. And this one identifies personal information and what's protected by law. So it gives you a framework, and it's different than directory in a paper environment. So that's just an example to give you a heads up and why it's important we work as a team to understand what types of information are protected. And in the digital space, things that we wouldn't think of that were a school record. So when I'm in school, I think, oh, a teacher did that, or a student did that, or it's about a student at a school, so that's a school record. But in the digital space, even things like their device, the unique identifier device, or the IP address, or searches, all of that falls now within data privacy laws, especially if you're in California. So then this slide here, though, is going to show you some documents that we put together, iKeepSafe has put together with privacy professionals and experts and educators. It's the top 10 privacy tips. And it's not super light reading because there's quite a few things to flip through. But it's a place where you can look at a case-based or use-based situation. So we had questions come to us from different people in the school system about protecting student data or wanting to use different technology. And then we'd say to them, well, did you think about this? And you think about that, and now just make sure you get permission for this. So that's the cheat sheet for that one, and you can download it. Along with our privacy roadmap for schools, we've got a curriculum matrix, and the actual curriculum, I just saw Berkman, we partner with Berkman to develop the curriculum, and their high school is out and ready, so we'll get that up on our site now. And then we will have, they're not off the press yet, but we'll have a series of student privacy training that will be available at no cost. It's professional development, and it's designed for your administrators, for teachers, for your school board members, and very happy to share that. So here comes the big deal. How do we manage protecting all of these important digital data pieces with what we really want, which is the learning, the technology and learning goals? And then what are our roles around that privacy and security? What's our roles and our responsibilities? And who are they and what do they do? So this is where it's so important we recognize every single person that has access to student data, whether they're on campus with you or off campus with a vendor, has a role to play. And that's where, as educators, we actually can know where our data goes and how to do this. So it's more than just data, it's also behavior. So when you look at the evergreen concepts, how you pull everybody together and you know how to keep kids safe and healthy and well on campus, it's the same thing we do in the digital space. And the evergreen concepts to address this fall within 4 domains, and it's your policies, it's your programs, your systems, and your incident responses. And I'm excited for you to hear about Simi Valley because years ago, Dana and her team here at Ventura County got together, their group, and they put the knee safety committee together, and they looked cross-sectional, they got their silos to all talk to each other, and they started looking at their acceptable use policies. And what happened is they got to the point where people really understood the policy enough that they developed curriculum, their digital citizenship curriculum, actually teaches the set of expectations that they've built in their policy. Which I love that. That's such a great litmus test. If people recognize our policies are what we've predetermined, how we're going to work together, and our expectations. So if you have thought through carefully in advance, how do we want to handle these situations, or how do we want to prevent and work together then to respond, it makes all of the difference. So we don't want to, on school, we don't want to feel like we have to be the ones on the fly to just do our best guess and try to figure it out. We don't have to have that type of anxiety. Every stakeholder in their roles can work together so that we have this set of expectations. Okay, if this happens, we have our plan. We all know the plan. We all have a role. And here's an example. I was in a school, and one of the teachers had mentioned she had picked up a cell phone of a student. He was only 12, and as he wasn't supposed to have it out. It was his mobile phone, and when she picked it up, his photo on the top, he had gang paraphernalia and he had weapons. So this is, a child with gang paraphernalia and weapons, and she just went, oh my goodness, I don't know, is there mandatory reporting on this? What do I do? I don't want the gangs upset with me, and what do I do with this phone? And they didn't have a plan at that moment, but she did fortunately go to the principals. They turned it into law enforcement. They were able to find the stash where the weapons were kept near the school. The gang had been keeping weapons near the school. But the best part is now this young man, rather than waiting till he's 15 and arrested, there was help for him and intervention. So in the digital space, we don't want to be that teacher that picks up the phone. Another teacher picked up a phone and it was actually a sexting image right there on the front. And, what do you do with that? And we've seen situations that were really challenging for principals or people in that first initial moment when something's happened and they mismanage their gathering their evidence, and it puts them personally at risk because they get arrested for child pornography, distribution, and collection. Anyway, so teamwork, you think ahead in advance, and you have a whole different set of variables if you've got your policies and your programs that support them, you've got your systems in place, and then you've got your incident responses already pre-worked out. So to create this positive digital culture, now we've got people at the school system, we have a set of expectations. We also want to have expectations for our vendors. And iKeepSafe created a way for schools to have a trusted privacy professional take a look at the products. So we work with the vendors under a non-disclosure agreement, and we review their privacy policies. We walk through the product as a child, a student, a teacher, and then we have a set of expectations that are nice and high. So we review for FERPA, for COPPA, for PPRA, and we also have a state badge, which right now we call California, which covers a whole lot of other states' California laws. Because that's just something vendors can do and bring products to you that have already been reviewed and that have privacy policies that already align with what you're looking for, and product profiles that help you determine, okay, do I have everything I need at a glance, rather than, okay, now the three of us start at the top, take a look, which is happening across the country. So anyway, that's one solution. But today, we're going to focus on how do we create this positive digital culture, and how do we move forward in a way that everyone feels supported and not isolated and left out and having to wing it all on their own. So how do we work together, and how do we prepare students to live in this digital culture? So it's really not helpful if we just lock everything down and go, okay, now we're private and we're safe on the digital environment. Oh yeah, kids, go ahead, go out there and just figure it all out on your own, and lose all these opportunities that we have if we connect. So it's really about how do we pull all of our stakeholders together so we can create our own digital culture and also prepare every student to survive and thrive in a digital culture. And that's not a one-time deal. So I love this picture, this illustration, because you see there's a lot of people on campus, and there's a lot of different stakeholders in the school system. These are all stakeholders that when you get them together, I've watched this happen now many, many times. You get these people together that might not have ever sat face-to-face. So sometimes you'll have curriculum teams and IT directors that maybe have not spent a lot of planning time together. And I love watching how you get these champions. So you'll have a champion, a curriculum developer will say, well, we really wanted to do this app or this digital test or whatever, and we're going to be in this corner of the building all on the same day, same time, with 400 of devices or 50 devices, and would really love for it to work. And if that happens before the event, there's a lot of teamwork that happens on the back end that makes it happen. If it doesn't, you can have 500 kids thinking they're going to do something, and the teacher's all ready to roll, and then, oh, surprise, surprise, there's bandwidth and spectrum issues on that one little piece. So I'm just always thrilled to watch the different types of stakeholders that then become champions. And you'll have history teachers that go, oh, I so get this. I would love to be the person that is a privacy, a privacy leader. You just different. When you get to siloed people together and they create plans together and they predetermine policies, then there's a set of understanding that makes everything go easier.
And Marsali, I'll just jump in for a second. One of the things that we have found in Ventura County is through a lot of collaboration and meetings with different teams, we all of a sudden discover some of those things that we get a group of excited teachers who come back from a big state conference and they are so excited to use a new piece of software they found. But we're starting to educate them to think about some of these things about what does it take to actually create student accounts? What does it take to, what does that company, does that vendor have a policy that addresses student privacy and where that data is going? But oftentimes this takes a little more planning and it takes a little more pre-thought, but what the result has been that we get a little more consistency in the software that we're going to be using, and hopefully that we're going to be able to support and provide better support for that on the technology side as well, to address issues you mentioned about bandwidth and security and some of those other things as well. But we don't want to stand in the way of teachers doing a great job in the classroom, but we also want to be there to support and make sure that their data is secure.
That brings up such a great point, is that connected technology is not just the electricity. You can't just flip a switch and it works. There's so many little components that all have to fit together, and when the cross-silo teams work together, it makes a big difference. This especially shows up when you're having to respond to an incident. So and we've watched this with IT directors. You'll have a principal come in, well, we've got kids harassing each other right now. What's going on, you IT director? You brought this technology in, and now, it's like, well, people who focus on the technology aren't necessarily the behavior specialists that you need to help you navigate how to help kids come down from the emotional volcano they're sitting on. So working together, it very much is like a coach and a playbook. And everybody has an important role. And you can't just ignore one. And not one person can do it all. And locking it down doesn't do it either. So it's really about teamwork. And this brings us to I'm so thrilled to partner with BrightBytes, because we have worked with them to take our years and years of working with schools and school systems to create a module that helps them ask the right questions, set a plan in place, it creates this common structure, it brings the teams together, and then it also provides some ways to find what's working in other schools. So you don't have to everybody go, okay, well, let's do a search and find whatever. We've found some great examples, and it creates this clear vision of how we move together. For me, I know it sounds cheesy, but it's inspirational. It actually is, because with one glance you look at the slide and you go, oh, okay, I can see where I'm headed. And that it's helping to ask the right questions. And that's part of the biggest challenge, is when you pull your silos together, it's like, okay, now what? So this takes that, okay, now what, out of the equation. So this is where you actually predetermine, how do we want to work together? And that's called your policies. And you pull the people together that don't just decide it, they actually have to live it and teach it and implement it. And they're right there at the table, so you have a framework. And then these are all the people that you need also to create programs that support them. So you have your policies already lined up. Now you've got a way to track your programs and be sure that you've covered them all. So if there's something really important to you and there's no program that supports it, then how are people going to learn it? And the fact that it was all capitalized and they signed a paper at the beginning of the year and it was all capped in tiny, tiny font does not cut it in the court. For you've not covered your liability, but more than that, you've not done what's going to help create that positive culture. And then even if you have great policies and you've got programs supporting it, you still have to have systems in place. And some are technological and some are procedural, but you've got to have that set up. It helps you to enforce. It also informs you when something goes wrong. And then this is the most critical part to having a positive digital culture. Is everybody's got to know if you're that first responder. So if you're the teacher who picks up a cell phone and there is a sexting image on it, a child abuse, sexual image, you want to know right off, okay, there's a plan for this and I know what to do. And you've got that set of expectations. So in the module itself, you will see all the things point and connect so that you'll have a communication plan for if something goes off. So if you have a student who goes outside your network and outside of your filter and into some site that mom didn't want them there, then you already have a plan of, remember when we talked earlier this year and how we talked about how we're going to do our best and that sometimes students need to also be reinforced. Anyway, it gives you the communication skills to be able to address in a very healthy and productive way. And it takes away that, oh, I hope it doesn't happen to me. I mean, nobody wants to deal with hard situations, but it's even worse if you don't know what to do. And, there's a lot of consistent things that every school system now has to deal with, so we don't have to pretend it's not going to ever happen. We can just say, what have you already seen, and so what do we need to prepare for? And that's what iKeepSafe did. We worked with folks in the with law enforcement who were dealing with cases and with defense attorneys who were defending schools on real cases, and we identified the areas that we know for sure have happened, so might possibly happen in your system, and we don't want you to feel like you have to figure it out on your own. So this is why I think it's inspirational. When you look at this slide, it gives you at a glance, where am I with my policies? How am I doing with my privacy policies or my safety policies? How's my team doing? How are my programs? Do I have the right people? Do we have the programs that are supporting our expectations? How are our systems? And then how are we doing with our incident response? And the little colors help, the text helps, and it takes away that, okay, now what do we do next? And one of the things that are, when you're in the module itself, it gives you something you can do right then, that minute, that day. So a really quick win. What's something we can do right now that's going to make a difference? And then show me some examples of what's working. So I don't have to just try and guess. And you're going to see Ventura has so much to share. You've got some really great examples that you'll be able to share. And then this part right here, I wish if I were there in front of you, I would put the spotlight, the laser pointer on here, and put documentation. Because when we talked to the attorneys who were defending schools, they said, Marsali, schools are their worst enemy when it comes to how they manage an incident with gathering the evidence and documenting what they're doing that's really terrific. So if you have a document that shows your due diligence, you don't have to be at a 10 on every level in your school. No school is a 10 everywhere on every level all the time. What you do want to say to a judge or to somebody who's investigating, if you do have one of those incidences that we know happen, we have a plan. We have a plan that is entire school system wide, and it involves a set of expectations. We're working together. So if you have your communication plan and you've documented your journey, that's your due diligence. The fact that you know that you have gaps, hello, we all have gaps. Like, where is there every expectation that everyone's always healthy and well and doing everything just right? But it's when you don't know what your gaps are. That's where the risk is. So this module, and it was so important to us that BrightBytes actually built into their Clarity platform the capacity for schools to document their own process and share documents. So if you're in a county, you can share with your district the documents that you think are critical, and they can share within their districts the things that they need and your own journey. So this is a huge deal when it comes to reducing your liability. So here's the last story. One of the schools that we were with, and it was a rural district, and the IT director was called before the school board because you have those meetings of, okay, where are you? And often the school board would mostly tell them what they wanted and what they thought was going to be best and what they think the school needs to do and how he needs to do his job. And he said, Marsali, it was the first time I was looking forward to going in front of the school board because I had a document to share what I knew we really needed. So it gave me the capacity to share with the board what our district actually needed, and then they could be actually helpful. And this was a nice new, this was a new situation. And it's so rewarding to see what happens when you bring these silos together and people work together. I found in the education community, people want to do their best. They want to do things well. I've never run into a school that says, I don't care about kids. You know, if anyone in education community knows something, they're going to teach it or they're going to do it. So it's not about the lack of desire or capacity. It's really not understanding the right questions and how to pull the teams together, and then how to incrementally move forward with a shared vision. Just like a coach pulls their team together and goes, okay, well, we can't all be quarterbacks, or we can't all be tight ends, or we can't all, you know, everybody has a role to play. The module helps establish who's the quarterback on the privacy world, it pulls that all together. So I'm going to turn this over to Steve, where you get to hear on the ground what actually is working. And I've been familiar and worked with Ventura for many years, and I just think they're one of the most outstanding school systems. And I think the county here has found incredibly effective ways to support their districts. And this is where I just have to put in this one little plug. I do not ever see them mandating how districts do things. I've seen them create a set of expectations and said, how are you going to handle these things? Because every district needs to do some things that are unique for their situation with their own families. So it's the leadership that makes a difference, so that the districts are asking the right questions and they have a set of expectations that is consistent. So, Steve.
So I want to thank you, Marsali, for that introduction and also that great presentation. It's obvious about Marsali's not only her expertise but her passion for what she does here, and we have been very honored and appreciate all of the work and collaboration we've done with iKeepSafe. And I have to really give my hats off to Dana Greenspan, our ed tech specialist, who has done, she's the one who first discovered working with Marsali, brought her to our office about 8 or 9 years ago, and we have done a lot of great collaboration together. But Dana has really done such a lion's share of the work with it, and it's just been a great team effort. So I'll just tell you a little bit about Ventura County and what we're doing. So we have, as Andrew mentioned in the beginning, we're serving about 20 districts in the county. We have 5 charters. We have about 145,000 students and 20,000 staff. Our county office and our tech services department hosts the financial systems for all the districts. We host student information systems for many of the districts, the IEP, which is the special ed software for many of the districts. And we also have as Marsali said, we're part of a number of other county office group. We're part of the California Superintendents Group, which is all the superintendents together, so we work with other county offices very frequently, especially in light of some of the close counties, Santa Barbara and San Luis and Kern. We work with them very closely as well. So just a couple things, just a background on our county office, or our county students by ethnicity. This was actually off of our CalPADS data. Primarily, a lot of 55% Hispanic students in our county, serving all the 20 districts. You can kind of get a number of our free and reduced lunch numbers. Essentially, little lower than the state total, but you can see we have a high number of ELL learners as well as free and reduced lunch learners as well. Some of our districts have higher concentrations than that, but different representation across those 20 districts. So what started us? One of the things that I kind of love to mirror on what Marsali's, and this is why I think we all work well together, is because we too have that vision about fostering a good amount of technology incorporated into instruction, but doing it in a safe and secure way. We want to make sure that our districts and our teachers understand about the correct way to do things, making sure that we're not jeopardizing that student safety or privacy. We also have had some experience over the years. Some of the work that we've done together with iKeepSafe has been around the idea of digital citizenship. Marsali mentioned the example of Simi Valley, which was a really good one. Dana has done a great job of working with folks in the Simi district, also in other districts, to work on tech planning. She's done, our office has done a lot of professional development in this area. We were just talking about this morning, but we started a task force back in 2012 to talk about acceptable use policies, and we're really kind of calling them responsible use policies, but it really was about getting kids and staff to understand what it means to, and it was not just a policy that was up on a shelf somewhere. It was a whole program that was associated with it by educating our students around it, and Dana was a big force in that whole process. So again, it's been very exciting to work with iKeepSafe on this, and again, we're going to just continue the work together that we're doing. One of the things that why we are focusing, I think Marsali's given a great background on kind of our direction and what were some of the business and school drivers that put us there, but the new legislation that we faced in January of 2015 was this AB 1584, which really required that school districts that are signing contracts or renewing contracts with vendors that may host our student data, that we made sure that our contracts were compliant with that new legislation. We were kind of surprised at how much that really meant, because when that came on, all of a sudden it meant we had to revisit our student information systems, our student assessment systems, our curriculum apps that required student information in them, any of the new accounts that had to be logged in. There was this huge effort about really, one, doing a clean inventory and assessment of what those systems were. But then what we started finding is many of our districts were doing the same thing. And then across the state, many of the counties were doing the same thing. And we found that there was this real duplication of efforts going on. And I have to admit that in many cases, we did not have the technical or even legal expertise to try and figure out, do we have the legal understanding of what somebody puts in a policy, and does that really cover what AB 1584 was asking when it talks about third-party integration? What is it doing when who are they sharing data with and for what purposes? And so I mentioned just before, and Marsali referred to her badging process at iKeepSafe and what they're doing in that. What we did, Dana and I got together with a group last fall, was it? And we sat down and we began to bring together a team that represented our SEDPA group, which is the California Ed Tech Professionals Association, our county office, iKeepSafe, and then our attorneys, which were Fagan, Friedman, and Fullfrost. And we met up in their offices in Oakland, and we spent a day brainstorming about how we could work on kind of a common goal. And that common goal was really to kind of figure out ways that we could help facilitate and avoid duplication of efforts. And that really was, in many ways, what led to the whole badging process that iKeepSafe is working on. They got a lot of consultation from F3, or Fagan, Friedman, and Fullfrost, about the legalese part on the policy side. But what I'm really excited about with that is I've reached out to just about every vendor that we use, and we're encouraging them to go through the badging process. And we're talking about some of the big cloud providers, you know, Microsoft and Google and some of the ones that host that student information. We want to make sure that those companies are also paying as much attention to student privacy and safety as we are. And so we are really encouraging them to go through that process. On top of that, the other thing that we started in Ventura County was something that we're calling this e-safety task force. And Dana has developed a website that essentially hosts all of this information. And in that website, we began to put this together. At that point, we were still in conversation with BrightBytes and how we were going to use the module as the module was being developed. But Marsali had shared with us this whole 360 assessment piece, which we really wanted to look at each district and how we would identify where our gaps and strengths were. But now that we're using the module, it will allow us to facilitate that even more broadly. So let me tell you a little bit about the task force itself. What we wanted is we wanted to break down those silos. We wanted to have representation from every school district in Ventura County, and we have gotten that. So we're very proud and pleased about the fact that we've been able to reach out, and with a little arm twisting in some cases, but we've been able to get gentle arm twisting. We've been able to get participation from every school district and charter in Ventura County, and they're part of this e-safety task force. And it's not just tech people. So just so you know, we have HR directors, we have communication people, we have lots of TOSAs, teachers on special assignment, we have principals, we have superintendents that are part of that group, we have HR people.
Teacher librarians?
Teacher librarians that are part of that group as well, absolutely. And what we're really focused on, at least in this round of this task force, is to focus on 4 primary groups, work groups that we're calling. And each of these work groups have deliverables, they're putting together resources, and I have to say Dana is shepherding a lot of these groups and making sure that they continue to keep on task, which is not an easy thing when we have about 60 people that are part of the entire task force. But the 4 areas that we're focused on, which kind of tie back into the BrightBytes module as well, is this area around policy. So starting with board policy, identifying what board policies we have that relate to student records, to student privacy, and making sure that we have updated policies for each of the districts that are participating. And areas that we don't, we're finding examples of those and getting down to both the administrative regulation side of that as well as the exhibit side of that. The other group that we've started is this group about data sensitivity. And this is really aimed at trying to identify who in our organizations, each of our respective districts, who has access to this student data, what student data they have access to. And Marsali mentioned before some of the personally identifiable information, what that information it contains, but who does have access to it. I think back on the days during the paper records being in education. If you know, we knew where the locked cabinets were, where those CUME folders were, and who had a key to be able to get to that. I think that one of the things that's happened is we have to put that same kind of burden on us about who has access to the student data, and make sure that we're not giving unauthorized access or making sure that we really have a good idea of what data is being stored where. So that's really an important piece of it. And by the way, we're dealing with this on the e-safety side. It's not just student data, we're dealing with staff data as well on this. So if it's financial information, HR information, we're also addressing it there. Our student privacy website is really intended to generate a rubric to review products, and this can be everything from the contractual side, the big system side, to the app side, down to the point where if a teacher is signing up for an app on behalf of her students in the room, who are those students, how old are they, what information is being gathered, and they're coming up with strategies on how to review those apps and what to do in the event that we want to use those apps. So that's a really important thing. Finally, the last group that's part of our work groups is the systems and security side, and we knew that this was a need. In fact, we're trying to get to this in order to kind of get these 4 groups down so that we can then really address the incident response piece. But on the system and security side, it's really developing some best practices around password protection, complexity, identifying safety practices around mobile devices, because that was one of the big ones, is that we have so many mobile devices floating around. We wanted to make sure that we've got a best practice model involved. And then what we do in the event of breaches. So again, unfortunately, we have one of our districts that just recently went through a breach, and it was really a theft where actually machines were stolen from an office, and there was student data on it. And it's what we're finding now is we have to really spend time doing an investigation, following those breach protocols, those parent notifications, etc. But it's making us all look at our practices and our policies internally. We have just logistically, we have monthly meetings, but then there are a number of monthly full group meetings, but then we also have a number of virtual and face-to-face meetings with the working groups to keep on task. And Dana keeps the whip moving and keeps us all on task with those, which is great. But the goal is really to create a system-wide program that we can capture. And what we're finding right now is using the BrightByte module, which is, even though our website does have some of this, what we really wanted to do is be able to capture this individually for each district. So using the BrightByte module, members of this task force representing their institutions and districts will now be able to assemble a team internally for their own district that will help kind of bring these stakeholders together, document where each of these districts are, and begin to establish some baselines. And what those baselines will help us do is really find out where our strengths and weaknesses again are. What we want to do is trying to be honest about where we're at, and also it will help us. And when I have to go to our board and say this is the area where we're strong on, but these are some areas that we have growth on, it will give us resources that we need to move forward. In fact, we're doing that actually on the security side. We're engaging right now with some third-party auditors to come in and look at our security practices. Again, without having that baseline data, it's hard for me to establish that and the need for it until we start gathering that. So I think that's one of the things that we're really seeing is going to be a real benefit of this. And then really kind of working together, I think as we move forward with the BrightBytes module, we want to make sure that we can then, as a county and as those individual districts, begin to, this is an ongoing process too. I want to mention that this is cyclical. This is a repeatable process that you constantly need to reevaluate as you're putting in new technology, using more applications, more systems. These are the things that you need to constantly review. On this side, this is kind of mentioned, but it really is finding this BrightBytes tool, and having this data in front of us will really help us meet those challenges. And that's just some screenshots showing some of the things that we can refer to when we're trying to pull this data, but it will make it very easy for us to identify, to visualize, and to actually improve on and act on. And again, having that repository there for each of the districts to be able to capture their own policies, their own practices, is going to be one of the things that will be really useful moving forward. So with that, I'm going to hand this back to Andrew, and we'll have some times for Q&A. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Stephen, for sharing Ventura County's experiences with privacy and security issues. And thank you also so much to Marsali for explaining how schools can create a safe digital culture. Now, before we turn to the questions, I want to direct your attention to the URL on this slide, digitalprivacy.brightbytes.net. Go to this site if you want to see a demo of the digital privacy, safety, and security module in action. This is the module that has been developed by BrightBytes in partnership with iKeepSafe. Now we have about 7 minutes left to handle questions. Now, several members of the audience have already posted questions, but you still have time if you want to get in a question at the last minute here. So just use the Q&A panel to do that. We'll try to get through as many questions as we can. And if we don't reach your questions, Marsali and Stephen or someone from the team will get back to you with some answers. So why don't we start with a question which, I'm going to direct to both of you. And Marsali, maybe you can start, and then Stephen, we can hear what you have to say. And someone from the audience want to know, it seems like most of what I hear about these days are resources for making sure that vendors' privacy policies are in order. Is this the only thing I really need to pay attention to, and isn't this the most important thing? Marsali, what do you think about that?
Well, just like in the offline environment, to have a child safe and so to create that same type of comfort and set of expectations offline with a student on campus, it's more than making sure that the furniture and the playground equipment is safe. So you still have to check on the furniture and you still have to check on the playground, but the vendor is only that piece. The bulk of the work actually around creating a positive digital culture is done with the people on your team. You can't negate the fact that if you have furniture or technology or something that is potentially risky, you can't mitigate that with your own behaviors. But to get lost in the weeds of our vendors protecting our student data, we lose the opportunity for everyone in the school system to recognize, if I have access to student data, I have a role to play. If I just only do one little thing, I still have a role to play. So vendors are a challenge, and I should have mentioned that there is no cost for schools to have a product badged. We work with the vendors and we charge them a flat nominal fee compared to what's out in the world of assessments. And so once a product's been through, a vendor's been through the iKeepSafe assessment, the successful results are available to all schools at no cost.
And Andrew, I might just add too that so while I have a tendency to jump in and start looking at the vendor's privacy policy just because we've been doing this a lot, not being an attorney and not understanding all the legalese, it's really helpful for me to have somebody else, a third party, look at it. And having somebody like iKeepSafe who's had practice doing it, they have staff who are dedicated to this. The other piece of this is that I don't necessarily, even if I can go in and simulate what I think is happening on the back end of a vendor solution, without having somebody do a real data mapping and a technical review of what happens with that data, I really don't know what's happening with that data. So that's another thing that I would say is provided by iKeepSafe. When they go through the badging process, they really take the time to do that data mapping and technical review to assure that that data is staying where it's supposed to be, or at least if it is being shared, it's explicit how it's being shared and what's being shared, and that's documented.
Okay. All right, terrific. All right, well, Steve, let me stick with you for the next question. During the presentation, Marsali referred to the silo effect, which I think everyone is familiar with. Now, you represent a very, very large organization. How did Ventura get such cross-functional buy-in from so many different stakeholders?
That's a good question, and it's one that it's a little hard to answer other than this has taken years and years of trust and credibility and follow-through. And I think in large part, one of the things that's been extremely helpful is I'm very fortunate to have a staff that follows through and keeps supporting. Dana's done tech planning for every district in the county, so they know her, and they know that her work is good and she follows through with things. I know that every superintendent in the county that if they want to call me or our IT director wants to call me, I make myself available. We have an opportunity to kind of break down those silos because we have years of working all together. And that's not an easy thing to replicate. That takes years, but I think in one of the areas that Marsali talked about with Be a Pro, it's about relationships. And I think that's so much a part of trying to get stakeholders. I attend our CBO meetings, the chief business meetings. We have staff that attends our HR meetings. We have a superintendent's meeting that we're invited to periodically. So it's trying to get in front of those groups and also follow through with things and build that continued relationship and trust and credibility. I think those are the things. And again, I have to commend my staff on so much of that because that's such a big part of making that work. Those soft skills and so those soft things that are part of it, Andrew.
Well, and I think that's also how the module will help, because with the module, it helps create the vision for how stakeholders work together, so it gives you the plan that then people can follow up. But yeah, there's been such great leadership out of Ventura.
Okay, great. Well, thank you. Marsali, we probably have time for one more question. I'm going to direct it to you. Listening to your presentation, one of the audience members is just struck at how many programs and policies seem to be needed to be put in place, and that it can be completely overwhelming, and sort of their impulse is to sort of pulling their head into the shell and just hope it all goes away. I mean, for someone who's looking for how do you get started, what advice do you have for actually taking those first steps to get something which seems so overwhelming started and rolling? Do you have any advice on that?
Yes, and that is so true. I've seen that multiple times. I was in a district once where when I started to lay out, here's the things around privacy and protected data, and I just saw the look on their faces like, oh no, and then we're just going to shut everything down and only add things one at a time. It's like, okay, we actually can have a really nice plan that is going to take us step by step. So what we don't want is for people to feel like it's impossible. And we used to feel like it was impossible to keep kids safe at school. And it's not possible to have a child 100% safe in every environment on campus. But when you look at how well schools work together in so many locations across the country, the people at the front desk are working to help, and the people who are in the halls, the people in the restrooms, the people on every corner of campus. So when you work with the module, and that's why I call it it's inspirational, because it's going to give you the big picture, the long range goal, and the module has a quick win. So you're going to, when you look for the first time, it's almost, some people are like, well, I don't really want to know, because I don't want to know how far behind I am. But actually, if you were only eating tuna fish every single day for your whole life, you would want to know that there's other flavorful food, and there's other things that can help you have strong muscles. So as you look at the module, it's going to walk through very robust sets of questions, because we know what's showing up on the other side, and to not tell you means you have to figure it out if it happens to you. So as you pull your teams together, it's helping them know there are little things we can do right now, but it's a process. It is a journey, and if we have a shared vision, then everybody becomes a champion in their own area. So silos are not only silos. There's still people doing their jobs, but they have a much better expectation about what that team needs over there, and what this team needs, and how I can help with my passwords. Or there's a way to work together in the digital environment that just gets better and better. And once you do the first piece, so when you first get started, there are people who just really look really worried. And if they have that confidence that it's not a today thing, that we are instantly going to have everything set, but that we have a shared vision and we're going to work together, we're going to document our process. If anything happens that we really didn't want to have happen, we already have a plan, and we know we don't have to wing it all alone. And that's incredibly helpful. In the tool, you also have those long vision goals. They're set out for you. So you don't have to just try to wing it, and then you don't have to guess if I do this or do that or do this or that. And in the module, it's not telling you how you should do it. It's making sure you know that this needs to happen. And you can determine with your own families and your own technology or your own location how you want to manage that, but it takes away that element of surprise. So it is better to know, and it is better to know where we are and how we protect student data, and that just because we didn't used to have to do it doesn't mean that we can stay in who wants to stay in a society where you can't be connected at school? So we just have to learn new things, and we're the first generation of educators to have to do it. So it's okay that we didn't have it modeled to us by the person who had the job before us, and we didn't have a college class that prepared us. And this is why we're together today. This is why we partnered with BrightBytes, and this is what we've watched the evolution in so many of the districts in Ventura do so well. It's because years ago, that's the process. We just all have to get in and do our little part, and over time it gets better and better, and people worry less and they feel more confident and more comfortable.
All right. Well, thank you. It sounds like we could have gone for another hour, but I'm afraid we have to call it a day there. As I said before, if we didn't have time to get to your question, Marsali or Stephen or someone from their team will follow up with you. And then as we wrap up, I really want to thank Marsali Hancock and Stephen Carr for really excellent presentations, extremely informative. And I would also like to thank BrightBytes for its support. And one final reminder, we will be sending out that email to everyone who attended today when the recording of the webinar is ready. So thank you to all, and this concludes today's webcast. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.